Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Fronteras, A Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno. This month we honor and celebrate Armed Forces Day and Memorial Day. During these days we pay tribute to all who have and continue to make sacrifices serving our country. Today we discuss the World War II generation of veterans. Every day we are losing members of this generation. They fought in battles across the globe, and when the war was over, they returned home and built the foundation of the standard of living that many of us in the United States enjoy today.
Over 16 million U.S. soldiers answered the call of duty during World War II. Monuments honor this humble generation of soldiers who fought in battles that leave millions of grave sites around the world today. Over 400,000 U.S. soldiers died during this war, and over 600,000 were wounded. We visited the New Mexico Veteran Services offices in Las Cruces and spoke with Jim Turner, who says around 1.4 million World War II veterans are still surviving today.
These guys aren't even out for any recognition or any type of notoriety or any benefits. I've had many veterans come into my office in World War II, and I've told them that they're eligible for some benefits, and they say, no, somebody else needs it more than me. They're a very modest, humble generation, and as they continue to die off, again, we're losing that part of it. Not to say that today's generation is humble or modest about what they've experienced, but these guys are much more in tune to getting things done, going back from that wartime situation and carrying on what they did when they left.
During the war, no state in the U.S. suffered more losses than New Mexico in the Bataan Death March. According to Turner, today's veterans appreciate those who came before them.
Nowadays, with Afghanistan and Iraq and the other wars, the young service member really truly appreciates the Vietnam veteran, the Korean War veteran, and the World War II veteran, but they don't get a chance to meet up too often because, again, we're talking numbers again. The median age now for a World War II veteran is over 90 years old. And again, when you look at the numbers of them dying off, they're not going to be around much longer. 10 years from now, there probably won't be any left.
According to the U.S. Department of Veteran Services, on average we lose 642 World War II veterans every single day. And with them go countless stories and memories that help define what has been known as the greatest generation.
We are honored to be joined now by Mr. Felix Provencio, a World War II veteran. Mr. Provencio, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's start off by, if you could share with us a little bit about your upbringing. Where were you from? Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Mesilla, New Mexico, on March 9th, 1925. I was brought up as a farmer, son of a father that was very strict. I grew up with a lot of respect for elders and just plain, my dad insisted on a lot of things that are old-fashioned now, but I was able to do a lot of things that are unheard now. You know, like working. I used to work from sun up to sundown. I wasn't the type of worker that my brother was, you know. Had a brother named John. He was a backbone of the farming and helping my dad. My dad's name was Juan, and he farmed all over Mesilla Park. And I was brought up helping him, and from very young. In fact, he would encourage me to go help in the farm rather than going to school all the times, which I hated, because I had a good time in school with all my friends, you know. But you do as you're told, you know, strict. Otherwise, my dad never whipped me or anything like that, but when he talked, you listened. It was just that generation where you just respect everybody. I remember people coming to visit us, you know, and I was in the room. They were talking about farming and so forth. My dad would say to these people, "This is, can we get you some water?" And they would say yes. So I would go get the water. And when I came back and gave them the water, I would stand across like that until they finished and gave me back the cup, and I would put it back, you know, and so forth. It was that kind of life, you know, very, very strict. Respect was the main thing. And I couldn't speak too well in English, but I could communicate kind of nice. I always liked school. I happened to be a very good with drawing in school, and they would ask me to do that kind of work. I had my favorite teachers, just like anybody else. Bunch of friends. It was enjoyable.
What was life like being a kid and growing up in the Mesilla Valley around that time? What were some of the things you did for fun?
Well, things that you never see now. You would get a wheel, just a plain wheel, and get a piece of wire and hook it up and just go around the, you know, barefooted, old patchy pants and so forth, just like the old days, you know, no different than what you see in the old days in the South, for instance. You know, picking cotton and stuff like that. And I had a chore. When I went to school, I had a chore to come immediately after school and pump water. If the barrel of water was half full, I was supposed to empty it and put fresh water in that barrel, because my dad had two horses, and they got a lot of attention. So I had to put fresh water every night, every day in the afternoon. When they come home from the farm, because my dad used to farm in Mesilla Park, somewhere east of Mesilla. So when I was going to school, my primary chore was come home and change that water, because the horses had to have fresh water. My dad insisted on that.
I see.
So that's about it, you know, as far as real strict things to do. That was it. That was my part of it.
Okay. Do you remember where you were when you were of the age to join the military? But first, I'd like to start off in, if you could share with us, if you remember where you were when you heard that World War II broke out.
When World War II broke out, they were broadcasting this thing all over. But I used to have a ritual thing together with my couple friends. We used to go to the Rio Grande Theater, and we followed the Flash Gordon episodes. And you know, they leave the episodes to where you have to go back next week and see what happened. So I would do that every Saturday, or whenever it was showing. So I don't know if it was Sunday, or must have been Sunday, because it was Sunday when the Japs attacked Pearl Harbor. And I got out of theater, and everybody, I walked all the time. I had a bicycle, but I never rode it. So I would hitchhike back to Mesilla. And I had this special friend that was always looking out for me. Excuse me. To give me a ride. I would stand on the corner of, what is it, the railroad tracks and Avenida Mesilla right there. I would walk all the way from the Rio Grande there. I was a natural-born walker, I guess, which I am now. I cannot do it anymore. But anyway, he would pick me up, and I was in this car when I heard the news that the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor. And me being, I think I was 16 at the time. Me being that young, no big deal, you know. I mean, you know, what the heck. You don't think about those things, you know. You don't think the seriousness of the thing. Little did I know that I was going to be involved, totally involved. So I went home, and these things keep on doing, you know. I read the headlines about, and I used to have a real steady girlfriend in Las Cruces. Her name was Lily, and we eventually, when I became 17, I don't know, I got in trouble with her, and so my mom and dad, I told them that I wanted to marry her. Oh, my dad says, you're crazy, you know, I mean, you're only 17, you know, I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, you're a good worker, but you can't support a wife, and, you know, things went on and on and on, so they sent me to California. And then I came back to marry her. I just couldn't be away from her, so I came back to marry her. And we had to get married. They wouldn't issue me or issue us a marriage license because we were too darn young, you know. So we had to go to El Paso. And we got married in El Paso. My brother took us back to California. And I loved California because at the time, you know, you're a teenager, you know, you're full of life, and I don't know, I just enjoyed it. Had streetcars, I would ride them all the time, you know, and so forth. I would get a job. I had trouble getting work over there because I was only 17.
I see.
So I got a job finally, and my brother rented us a little house and so forth, and we stayed there quite a while.
Could you tell us a little bit about what age you were at when you joined the military and what that experience was like, going through basic training and then being where you were shipped from there?
I was living with my wife then, and we had a little baby girl, and which I totally adored. As a matter of fact, my wife would get jealous because I would put all my attention to her. So then I became 18. Then my brother took me, almost the next day, took me to 6th and Main in Los Angeles, where they had this registration for the Army, you know. It was a sort of like a bus depot, but at the same time it was sort of like an induction center, you know. So I went in there and registered, you know, like you had to. Exactly about 10 days later, I got a letter from the draft board, and off I went. I was always very unlucky on that because of the fact that I didn't hardly had any time to enjoy life, and right away they called me in. Almost 15 days later, I was already in Fort MacArthur. And from there, they put all the necessary papers when you go in the Army, and then from there, they shipped me to Camp Roberts, where I took my basic training, infantry basic training, and then you take it for about, I don't know, 6 weeks or so. Then after that, you get a furlough. So I came to Mesilla, and my wife, my baby, my mom and dad, I was living with my mom and dad, and they gave me a 30-day furlough. And then at the end of that, I had a good time and so forth. Went to Juarez, you know. So then I was supposed to report to Camp Shanks, New York. I had my orders, you know, so, After the furlough, my dad and his friends took me to El Paso, took the train, and I went off to Camp Shanks, straight to Camp Shanks, New York, to go overseas.
What year was that?
I don't know.
Do you know what it was like going through that feeling of once you found out you were going to be deployed?
You know, you're young. When you're 18, you don't care. You know, you don't worry about the thing. You're full of, you're strong, and, you know, your mind is thinking of a lot of other things, of growing up and having fun, naturally, just like any other kid. So I didn't think too much of it. So one thing I do notice, I don't know if I should say this, but there was a lot of sort of like a little bit of prejudice, you know, Mexicanos, and, you know, and Americanos. And there was a certain amount of pressure, you know. For the fact that now, or I live in a sort of like a vacuum of respect and hard work and prejudiced. So I was going, and my first destination was St. Louis, and I noticed that going over there, I was in the train, and there was a lot of soldiers in there, you know, a lot of civilians and soldiers, and I noticed that, I don't know where it wasn't New Mexico, it was further east, that I was standing, you know, holding on to and then this lady, I don't know, middle-aged lady, she got up and offered me her seat. To me, it's sort of like, I says, no, that's okay, you know. Hey, yeah, I'm not gonna take a lady's seat, you know. So it's okay, I'm all right. No, I insist. So I sat down, and to me, I kept looking at her. I says, that's the first time something like that has ever happened to me, you know. Here's a lady, I figured, you know, to me, to this day, I can still see her face when she told me, says, I insist, sit down. Maybe she knew she was older. Maybe she knew you know, this guy is going overseas or whatever. I didn't care. So it was sort of like stuck in my mind all this time, to this day. Little things like that you never forget.
I see. Could you share with us, you're a veteran of the Normandy Invasion and the battle there. What was that like, going through that moment of such a important moment in the war?
I was very unlucky in the Army, but at the same time I was very blessed and lucky in other ways. We were in this hill, thousands of us, you know, soldiers, and we were just, you could see the planes and coming over and flying all over the place with pulling these, what was it, the gliders. And all of a sudden, I took sick one day. I got a fever. So I went to the medics, and they took me to the hospital. I forget all of this, the exact things that happened. But then, I'm in the hospital, and about 2 days later, the invasion took place. It was kind of weird. I got sick, and everybody's gone except me, because I was in this hospital. Oh, there was full of GIs in there, you know. But in a way, I was blessed because I didn't make the actual assault, you know. I was a replacement all this time, you know. I didn't have a company, I didn't have a division or nothing. You're a replacement. But then the replacements were being loaded for the first, maybe the second, third, fourth wave of the invasion. So then I see that you know how the soldiers, the little newsreels that you people around all over the world saw. I says, oh my God, I missed that. You know, I felt glad because I could be dead right now. Yeah. So then I got out and I couldn't find my outfit. I went to those hills where I was at and it was clean, nobody there. So then I saw a Jeep and I got a Jeep and I told them about this situation. And before you know it, I was in a boat. I was stepping into a boat to go across the channel. I vaguely remember all this stuff happening. And when I hit Normandy, it was about 4 days after the invasion. Everything was sort of like clear. Everything was sort of like any other day. There was a little bit of debris in the beach, but activity all over the place. Just hundreds of jeeps and trucks and so forth, constantly unloading things, you know. And by that time, the engineers had already fixed up a ramp off the beach. And the ramp was only from here to that curtain over there, maybe 50 feet. So, and then the boat would come over and unload us, and we went into the beach. And I remember stepping into France, and I leaned over and picked up some sand, you know, and just, oh my God, here I am in France, you know. And a guy from Mesilla, New Mexico, little bitty town, farming town, and here I am in France, you know. I felt kind of proud or glad or something, you know. That you feel sort of like special.
Your generation has been referred to as the greatest generation. What do you think it is about your generation of veterans from World War II that are the most unique out of all the veterans from the past and the present?
I don't know. My own opinion, I think it's the upbringing. You know, the freedom that people have nowadays, it carries on to the military. But you go into the military, your life changes. I wish they would have the draft now, just to have youngsters, especially men, go in there and spend 4 months or maybe 6 months or maybe a year in the Army and find out just what regimentation is all about, what respect is all about, saluting a man with that's higher than you in ranks, and that's necessary to avoid all this. What is it that's going on now? You know, there's too much freedom. You know.
You've been involved also in veterans work. Could you tell us a little bit about the honor flight that took place? We only have a couple minutes, but I would like to hear about what it was like for you to join with other veterans and visit the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C.
Well, I'll never forget a man by the name of Bill Matisse. He's the greatest. To me, I love him to death. He's great. He treated me so nice. And we used to go out to these meetings, and I used to speak, and we used to fundraising for the trip. And we used to do all right. And then Bill Matisse would involve us on an awful lot of stuff, World War II and so forth. And at that time, you know, we were all gung-ho. There must have been at least 30, 40 of us. They were really working and helping him out to raise money. And he was, oh God, I still miss him. Oh, good old Bill Matisse.
Do you remember the feeling when you stepped foot on the grounds of the memorial and looked around? What were some of the thoughts that you had?
I was impressed on the way there to the World War II Memorial, you pass by these other memorials. You know, the Marine raising the flag on the mountain, that whatever it's
Iwo Jima.
Iwo Jima. And then you pass the Navy and so forth, and you see all the memorials. But when you get to the World War II Memorial, it's unique. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. And you say, you know, but before that, we bought a senator that ran for president. I forgot his name. That's got a bad hand.
Bob Dole.
Asked him. He walked up to us and greeted us, you know, and made us all welcome and so forth. And we could see him walking, you know, towards us, and just to see him was a thrill. So,
see.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Provencio, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Our guest was Felix Provencio, a World War II veteran. This is Fronteras, a Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno. Thank you for joining us.